Bienvenidos al último día del Festival Internacional de Cine de los Cabos. Es un gran honor estar aquí presente, invitándolos a conocer a los realizadores que están detrás de varias de las películas de Competencia de los Cabos. Como ustedes saben, nuestro festival está ordenado para ser un puente entre México, Estados Unidos y Canadá, pero eso se extiende a muchas más nacionalidades gracias a la maravilla de las coproducciones y las fronteras que cada vez se desdibujan más en el mundo del cine. Para mí es un gran placer recibir el día de hoy a los equipos de 4 de las películas de Competencia de los Cabos: Soy Nero, La Región Salvaje, Operation Avalanche y The Other Half. Démosles un aplauso de bienvenida para comenzar. How are you guys?
We're good. Great.
Good? Joey Klein is the filmmaker, the director of The Other Half, and it's such a privilege to have this film with us. It premiered in South by Southwest, am I right? A beautiful Austin, Texas film festival. Very pop, very full of music, interactive arts also. And we're really proud of it coming here. Hey, Matt. Tell us a little bit about the travel, the journey of this film since South by Southwest. Where has it gone after that? Share with us a little bit.
We went from South by Southwest to a really cool small festival in Chicago called the Chicago Critics Fest, and then a bunch of festivals around Canada, including the Vancouver Festival. We just were the gala opening for a really special festival in Toronto called the Rendezvous with Madness, which only shows films that deal with topics of mental illness and addiction and recovery. That was about 3 days before coming here. And then our film comes out in Canada December 2nd, and in the States sometime in March. And then there's still a couple more festivals to come.
The Other Half is such a powerful story of love trying to conquer even the most humane of these graces, which is a mental illness. And Tatiana Maslany gives an amazing performance. We're really happy because Tatiana Maslany just won an Emmy a few weeks ago, and she's in 2 of our films in competition, in Two Lovers and a Bear from Kim Nugent, which was premiered at the Quinzaine des Réalisateurs at Cannes, and in The Other Half. Tell us a little bit, and she expresses such a wide range of acting capabilities. Tell us a little bit about Tatiana Maslany working with her.
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of a freak of nature, to be honest. Like, there's really nothing I think she can't do, and it's true of Tom, and she's just the most elastic person and artist, and I think one of the nicest things about working with her is I think she always looks for things that scare her. A lot of actors, I think, find what they get good at and sometimes live there, and she's always trying to stretch, and she's like a wonderful actress, but she's just also an insane artist, and she just gives everything to what she's doing, as does Tom. And so it was a real exciting thing for my first film, and a privilege as being an actor a lot longer than a filmmaker to work with people who leave everything out there and give you something new every time you do a new take, but continues to go deeper and deeper, and it's pretty outstanding.
You touch an important issue, which is your first feature, right? And here in Mexico, you know that this festival has an industry element, and raising money is hard sometimes outside of the regular US scheme. You guys in Canada have amazing incentives. In Mexico, there are some as well, but we're still, I think we struggle, both nations, on how to get to the screens, how to get people to pay for a ticket for a film that doesn't have the marketing power of a US franchise. Share with us a little bit, or both of you, how do you guys do it in Canada? Because we are certainly trying to find new ways here in Mexico.
My experience was very much a classical Canadian one, where I was very much inside of the system. I got funding from places called Telefilm and the OMBC and the Harold Greenberg Fund. I have a distributor named Mongrel who kicked something in, and it's just kind of different pieces that fill up the pie. And you also put your own money in, you just do everything you can. These guys probably have different experience than me because you guys kind of seem to work a bit more outside of the system as well. I would like to do that more. The system we have is great, but it does have its limitations. In terms of getting the film out there once it's made, I'll let you know how that goes because that's coming up. But it's tough, obviously, without film festivals to get small films out. And I personally am very open about and excited about online platforms. And I'm a film geek. I love watching films in the theater, but it's clear where the future's going, and I'm very open to the streaming possibilities.
Yeah, it's really hard to get people to see your movies in your own country. Matt and I are also from Canada. We made Operation Avalanche using mostly US money, but as a 100% Canadian movie. Our entire cast crew was Canadian. We shot most of the film in Canada. But it's not necessarily recognized there as a Canadian film all the time. It's recognized as a US/Canadian film, even though there's no official treaty between those two countries. But I think Canada and Mexico have a lot in common when it comes to releasing films because just of our geography and proximity to the US. And I think it's so hard for our industries to compete with the giant, Marvel franchises, as you say. And I could come pay $10 to see Doctor Strange, or I could pay $10 to see, Operation Avalanche, which I've never heard of, and has, stars this guy who nobody, well, maybe some people recognize, but it's definitely a challenge. And to Joey's point about telefilm in Canada, I think that we're seeing a lot of reform to that system right now. And there's a lot of interest in how arts funding in our country is going to kind of evolve, because right now it's using a set of principles that was sort of developed when 35mm exhibition was the king. And as Joey talked about digital platforms, I think our systems need to evolve to recognize those and figure out how they're going to work within those.
That's very interesting. And before giving the microphone to my dear Matt, which I always love to hear, let me thank Joey Klein and the other half, because it's an immense privilege for us to premiere in Mexico a film like yours, and representing another side of Canadian cinema in a way. So you're always welcome to return, please.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Matt Johnson, this is your second time at the festival in official competition. You brought the Dirties a few years ago. So we have close ties to you. We always love your cinema. It's so fresh. Many of you have seen the film. Operation Avalanche is a love letter to cinema. It's so meta. It's a very smart comedy about a very taboo subject in the States. But as Matthew was mentioning, it's weirdly marketed as an American film, but which in fact is a very Canadian film. So, add a little bit on that, please.
Well, I think this topic is very close to what's happening in Mexico, and that's that it is very difficult to fund large films because we have state funding in Canada the same way you have it in Mexico, but it's very difficult to make larger movies with the amount of money that you have access to, especially in Canada, unless you are part of a very small group of corrupt officials who are able to get money from telefilm no matter what. So as young filmmakers, we were lucky to be able to reach out to American partners to fund our films. And then we're in that complicated position of being completely Canadians, only working with Canadians, but not being recognized in an official way by our own country, which is it's so funny. But I think things are beginning to change in that sense. In terms of this story, I think it was important that we were Canadians telling it. If you don't know, it's about the CIA faking the moon landing. That's sort of the point of the movie. But I think being Canadians and not Americans gave us a great perspective on American history in a way that we weren't precious about it, that we could just use what we wanted and change facts because we weren't dealing with our own history. And I think that's something that Canada and Mexico actually has a great opportunity to do in terms of storytelling. Because we're so close to the United States, both geographically and politically, we have a perspective on that country that they just cannot have because they're in it. And I think it's not our responsibility, but it is worth looking at how we can tell stories about America that are important and need to be told, but from the perspective of outsiders. So I'm encouraged to see, especially in the new political climate, how an outside perspective on the American journey is told by people like us, people in this room.
And it's happening more and more, actually, Matt. I mean, we just opened the festival with Jackie, which is a very fresh take on Jackie Kennedy by a Chilean director, Pablo Larraín. Mr. Rafi Pitt on my left, he is making a beautiful film about the US and Mexico border. He has so many, your father is Iranian, your mother is Iranian, UK, yeah. You're a jack of all trades, my friend. Citizen of the world. No, but going deeper into the craft of Operation Avalanche, Matt, because it premiered in Sundance. We saw it there. We were waiting for it for so long because, as he said, this is a beautiful story because The Dirties was such a low-budget film, and it felt raw, and it was your first feature. And then you had, what, Lionsgate behind it?
Yeah, very quickly
for your second project?
Yeah, they bought the movie right away. Before we had even shot it, they bought it, and that gave us a lot of freedom to do the crazy things that we did in the film, which normally you would not be able to do as a studio picture. Lionsgate took a big risk and said that they would buy the film, but that they didn't need to be involved in the production. They didn't want to see a script. They didn't want to see rough cuts or anything like that. They gave us a lot of freedom. And so it allowed us to do a lot of the very, I would say, quasi-legal things that we did to make the film the way that we did.
I want to go into that because quasi-legal, it's a euphemism. I mean, you faked some of the... I mean, it's a beautiful film, but you went into NASA actually pretending to shoot a documentary when you were actually shooting your film.
That's right.
Right? And you're famous about people pretending to shoot a documentary. I mean, it's so meta, that's what I said that.
Well, we didn't have very much money, even though we were being supported by Lionsgate. The story that we were trying to tell was so big. It takes place in the 1960s, and because we were just film students in Toronto, we couldn't build sets, we couldn't recreate NASA the way that Ron Howard did in Apollo 13, and so what we decided to do was pretend that we were making a documentary about the 1960s, and we called NASA and asked if we could film a documentary as film students, which is what we were. But what we were really doing was, the characters in the movie are pretending to be filming a documentary, and so we went to NASA undercover basically and filmed our movie about NASA faking the moon landing, with the participation of NASA, without them knowing that they were involved in a movie about the moon landing being faked. And that was birthed out of necessity, but really that gave us such an incredible resonance because as characters, we were CIA agents in disguise, undercover, pretending to be at NASA for a different reason in the story. And because in real life we were doing the same things that our characters were doing, it just made everything so surreal. We would film everything that I said, everything that the other characters said we could use because we really were scared that we were going to get caught. We really were paranoid that people were going to figure out who we were. And all that stuff is in the movie. Like, you watch that as you watch the film. And so it creates a very bizarre feeling as an audience member where you're like, wait a minute, I know that this is fake, but it seems so real. And how did this happen? Which is, parenthetically, exactly what we want you to think about media footage like the moon landing or anything that the government tells you in the form of video. It's like the film got to be a little microcosm of the greater whole of the story, which was just so cool. It was just so fun to do. And again, it let us do things for very little money that otherwise would have been impossible.
And that's actually my next question, because when I said it is a love letter to cinema, you recreated, you had Stanley Kubrick in your film. And I want to know how you did that, right?
That was very challenging because, again, we asked this. So Stanley Kubrick is very famous in the conspiracy of the moon landing being faked. The conspiracy theorists, of which we are not two, we don't believe the moon landing was faked, but conspiracy theorists point to Stanley Kubrick as the architect of it. They say he was the only person with enough technical skill to fake the moon landing. And so we thought, okay, we have to have Kubrick in the film. But the Kubrick family and the Kubrick estate refused to give us any footage and refused to give us permission to have him in the story. They're quite adamant. We asked many times. And so what we had to do was go into the Time Life photographic vault and use very rarely seen photographs from the set of 2001, and we had a digital, our post supervisor, not our post supervisor, our visual effects supervisor, rebuild all of the sets digitally. And it took 6 months, but he created Stanley Kubrick, a walking, talking Stanley Kubrick, out of a photograph of Stanley Kubrick. So it was not what the Kubrick estate wanted, that's for sure. We took Stanley Kubrick's voice from the documentary his daughter made about him making The Shining in the 1980s. So we took his voice and we took his image and we turned him into a 3D model, and then we just moved him around, and I could talk to him. He gave me an autograph. We could do full scenes with the real Stanley Kubrick, not an actor. And the reason we did that, again, was because we wanted to show that you can change reality with film. You literally can change reality. You can bring people back from the dead. You can fool people into thinking something happened that really didn't. Which is again what the film is about. But we did not realize that we were going to do that when we started making the movie. We thought it was just going to be like Forrest Gump, where we got a little bit of video from the Kubrick family and we green screened me into it, and it was going to take a day. Instead, it took Tristan Zarafa, our VFX supervisor, 6 months, and it was the most work for 60 seconds of footage I think we'll ever do in our lives.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. We love coming here. I gotta say, you guys are so lucky to have this festival, and it is a real treat to be here for the second time. Thank you.
Hopefully you'll come for a third and a fourth and many more.
That's right.
Round of applause for Operation Element. And what a big privilege to have here in this theater, Mr. Rafi Pitt. We have followed his career for many years. Rafi has been named like a member of the new Iranian wave. He has been jury in so many amazing film festivals. Coming here with Rosa Fausto, which is a great privilege as well. And you know, it's sometimes sounds weird to have in a North American competition a film that has an Iranian director. But it's produced by a Mexican guy that we love, Nicolas Ellis. He has been very close to the festival. Nicolas has brought projects to the Gabriel Figueroa Film Fund, to all our industry platforms. And now, last year we gave an award to Soy Nero. And it's finally here, premiering in Latin America at Los Cabos. So I would like to start there. How is it to work for you with a Mexican producer? How was the experience? And in a film that needed a Mexican element, I guess.
Well, it's a Mexican story, I mean, it's interesting what you just said, because in cinema I've never seen nationality. In art I don't see nationality. I see individuals with a cultural background, but I don't necessarily look at their nationality. Probably because of my mixed background. Working with a Mexican producer was essential, because it's a story about green card soldiers. The majority of green card soldiers happen to be Mexican. The Mexicans who were deported after 9/11, who had to join the army to become American citizens. So, you know, once you go from there, you need to have the soul of the country in the film. And for me, not coming from Mexico, the more elements or from America for that matter, because we shot in both countries, it's essential to learn from the people I'm working with, to rectify it, if you like, and not to betray their reality. Because I wrote the script with a wonderful Romanian screenwriter called Razvan Radulescu. He did 4 months, 3 weeks.
2 days.
2 days. He did The Life and Death of Mr. Lazarescu. Wonderful writer, but we were writing between Bucharest, Berlin, and Paris. And we were imagining this story. And then when I came to Mexico, it all started with Mexico. Mexico started to tell me the reality of that situation. And until I came to Mexico and met Mexicans, I didn't know that there were deported green card soldiers. You know, that which for me seems like a crime. So, you know, it's I'd say Nico is part of the soul of the film, as well as the entire Mexican crew.
It's been a weird festival edition because it happened 2 days after an election that everyone's talking about it. So many of our films got immediately reflected on that in a way. And a film that's talking about the borders and it's talking about a guy who doesn't really seem to fit in any side of that desert. I heard many people that watch your film discussing that, like how does that, what is going to happen? We always see it as from this side of the border, like Trump winning this election, afraid a lot of people because we're seeing from here, but there's people on the other side that is afraid as well. So I guess it becomes even more relevant, and we need to reflect on films like this. How do you see your film today, 3 days after what happened?
Well, it's I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a walking nightmare because my previous film, when I made my previous film, I shot it in Iran, and it was a story about a guy who loses his wife and daughter in a shootout between police and demonstrators. Only when we made the film, the demonstrations hadn't taken place. Then they took place, and now I can't go back. That was a nightmare. This one, because I think as a filmmaker, you don't calculate, you don't know what the future is going to bring, but you feel what's going on somehow, and you reflect upon it and how you feel towards it, and then you express the feelings that you have. And so it sometimes coincides with time. But you hope, when you're making it, and this is the case of this story, you hope that you're pulling an alarm on a situation that your fellow man is facing. That's what you hope. And then all of a sudden, you feel like you're too late, because there he is. You know, like the monsters are already there. And when I say the monsters, you know, there's Trump, but there are so many Trumps. I mean, there are Trumps, you know, Brexit was Trump, in France we have Marine Le Pen, you know, there's all these extremes that are gaining a lot of power. And these borders, which are crazy, really, because when you think of the Mexican-US wall, the beginning of it, that nobody talks about, was in '94, 5 years after the Berlin Wall came down in Tijuana. That's when the beginning of this wall idea started. Then after the 9/11 and the Patriot Act, the wall began. And people, I find it very strange as I walk through this film. These walls get bigger and bigger, and they keep talking about walls like they didn't, like throughout the elections, every time they talk about the wall, you have the feeling there is no wall, but there is a wall, we shot it, you know. Now how much they're strengthening the wall, or how much they're making it taller, or wider, or whatever, is besides the point. The crazy thing is that wall exists. And what I find worse is that the walls are in people's heads because of the simplifications, because of the barriers. I mean, it's crazy to think that in 2016, there are 8,000 deported green card soldiers who risk their lives for a flag, and the flag doesn't care. That's crazy. And that's irrelevant of who's in power. They haven't cared. Trump's now in power, but they haven't cared. You know, nobody cares. And I find that obscene, because you cannot steal a young person's life and throw them away like that. Now, to clarify this, of course these 8,000 deported green card soldiers weren't deported for no reason. They were deported sometimes because they had used fake ID to join the army, because they were afraid that they'd be deported because they couldn't prove they'd been in the United States for 5 years. Some of them came back from the war zones and they forgot to file for citizenship, convinced that they were American because they were wearing the uniform throughout the war. And then they got into a fight, and first offense, deportation. There are guys, you know, and a lot of these guys won stars. They won medals for bravery. And they're all in Tijuana. There's a whole bunch of them. There's a place called The Bunker that I invite all you press to go and visit, because nobody talks about it, where you have a bunch of young guys who don't know what to do. They feel American. Everybody rejects them. They don't belong to any side. You know? And I think that's of importance in the world we're living in today, because the world we're living in today is pushing the extremes. And my question is, if you keep pushing, if you steal a young person's life, then throw them out, could you not question the idea that you might be creating your own enemy? And would you be surprised that you're creating your own enemy? You know, it's the madness that we're in, where the quantity of people in distress or in trouble doesn't matter anymore. 8,000 people in 250 million people don't count. For me, one life counts. And we're living in a world where, you know, everything's with numbers. When, for all of us in the movie industry, the numbers decide, you know, whether we can make a film or whether we can be encouraged to continue. It's about numbers. If a group of people die and it's a small number, nobody cares. If it's a big number, everybody cares. You know? So it's this crazy world we live in where everything has to be big. You know, now all of a sudden the wall that started in '94 has to be even bigger. It's great. I jumped over the Tijuana wall to take a look at the other wall. Because there is another wall. You know, there's the wall that we have on the Mexican side, and then there's the American side. It's a huge cement thing. You know, it's crazy because at the end of the day, if the Berlin Wall proved this, you want to cross the wall, you cross it. No wall will stop anybody from crossing it. So, for me, it's taking away walls, but especially the walls in the minds of people, because they're much more dangerous, and Trump encouraged those walls. You know, and the other Trumps in the world are encouraging walls. They're much more dangerous than these idiotic symbols that are created by government. Sorry if I got carried away.
No, it's amazing.
I had a moment.
No, it's
Sorry about that.
It's amazing. Even in the Q&A, it feels like film school. You know, it's amazing to listen to you. And I would ask for Rosa Fausto, who worked, you know, with you, and such a multicultural crew, I guess. So many backgrounds. So that's very healthy and enriches all the experience. How was it for you to work with this man?
Well, first of all, since I'm Mexicana, I'd like to speak in Español.
Perfecto.
And I'm honored to be here. And it's my first festival. I've been working as an actor for... Oh, perdón, español. Se me fue el coco. Pero primero que nada quería agradecer a todos los del Festival de Cabo. Es un inmenso amor que tengo para México. Trabajando con Rafi en Sonero, yo tengo experiencia trabajando en películas de horror. Y entonces, pues, esta es mi primera película que trabajo como una... no quiero decir el papel que hago, porque no sé si ustedes lo han visto. Okay. Tengo un secreto en la película que no quiero decir, porque no sé quién la vio. Pero Rafi me dio mi primer papel donde no tengo que llorar o gritar. Y así que me gustó mucho conocerlo a él, porque él me dio la oportunidad de expresar quién soy como actriz. Y pues estoy muy orgullosa porque he visto sus películas y es ingenio en su... cuando dirige películas, cuando trabaja con actores, él se entrega y te deja expresar como tú eres. No te dice como que no hagas esto, no hagas esto. Tú hazlo como tú lo sientes. Y pues si estuviera Johnny Ortiz aquí, él estuviera hablando más con pasión, pero como no está, yo hablo on behalf of him. O sea, en lugar de él, él tiene más pasión con esta película. Y yo hablo por él, pero si estuviera aquí él estuviera hablando de Trump y mandándolo a la fregada. Y diciendo que pues esta pared no se va a hacer, pero se tiene que hacer, yo no quiero tampoco, pero él estuviera aquí como gritándole y ponerle a la madre, que no vale nada de ese hombre. Él no es mi presidente y pues orgullosamente estoy aquí con aplausos en mi corazón en México, por ser mexicana, orgullosa de estar aquí, y espero que a ustedes les gustó mucho el Soinero. Soinero, perdón. I get confused with my Spanish and my English. I'm a little nervous because it's my first press conference, so I hope I did okay.
Un aplauso para Soinero y Rafi. Y me da muchísimo gusto darle la bienvenida, no por primera vez, porque también ha estado en nuestro festival de cine, a un gran y querido amigo, Amat Escalante, que estrena una película, que lo estrenó en Venecia, esta maravillosa cinta que representa a nuestro país en Competencia de los Cabos. Nos acompaña también Jesús Mesa y Ruth Ramos, dos de sus actores. Amat tiene un cine que nos debe tener muy orgullosos porque ha sido laureado alrededor del mundo y con La Región Salvaje gana el León de Plata como mejor director en el Festival de Venecia. Y quisiera comenzar por ahí porque finalmente es un momento muy valioso el que está viviendo nuestro cine nacional. Hay mucho por hacer, pero Amat es orgullosamente uno de los que está en la primera fila de esta generación de cineastas mexicanos. Amat, bienvenido.
Gracias. Gracias a todos por estar aquí.
Cuéntanos un poco de la experiencia de Venecia, porque no estuvimos allá, pero nos da mucho orgullo lo que ganaste.
Pues sí, siempre esos premios, pues te digo, yo me levanto a recibirlos, pero son de un trabajo que se hace en conjunto a través de años y es una buen recompensa, pero no tanto recompensa, sino ayuda, ojalá, a la película que cause más interés en México, en parte, ¿no? Porque son, desafortunadamente, sin esa atención que ha habido en el extranjero desde un inicio con mis películas, habría sido muy difícil o tal vez imposible poder seguir haciendo cine nacionalmente, ¿no? De la forma en que yo lo he hecho. Entonces, desafortunadamente y afortunadamente he recibido esos premios y han ayudado para yo poder seguir haciendo películas también, en parte, claro, ¿no? Yo haría películas de todas formas, pero tal vez no las tomarían tan en serio, aquí en México por lo menos.
Todos tienen traducción simultánea, ¿verdad? En el público. Quizá nos mudamos a inglés. ¿Estás bien, Amat, con eso? Sí. Para que nuestros amigos de la mesa nos ayuden. This is such an interesting Amat Escalante film because it's a very classic Amat Escalante film. It's raw. It's a criticism, a social, a very socially committed film on portraying a very deep side of Mexico that exists, and we all know it. Where still homophobia and the macho culture is still present in many families in our country. But then the genius of Amat, he adds an extra element of the supernatural, and not for spoiling the film, but for me that's what makes La Región Salvaje a piece of art, because it really elevates it. It's a very daring decision, Amat, to use an alien, a monster in a film that is making a social criticism in Guanajuato, right? When did you decide? You worked with Gibran Portela, I know. Tell us a little bit about the story of this decision.
Well, after two versions of the screenplay with Gibran, I came with this idea that was inspired from just directly from things that happened in the town where I live. No? There was a man that was drowned, and he was in the cover of the local weekly publication that puts very gruesome accidents and death and stuff. And this man that was drowned in the river, it had a very big headline that said "Ahogan a Jotito." It said like "faggot drowned," or "they have drowned the faggot." Yes. And this was a friend of the actress of my last movie, of a little girl from Ellie. The last movie I made was friends of this man, so it impacted me, and I read inside the story. It turns out there was a man that worked in a hospital, and he was murdered in a going out, you know, because of his sexual preference, and he was humiliated in this front cover of the newspaper, and that made me just. It said something about the society, and that nobody even complained about that, you know, and it made me look also at just general violence, not only this written violence, but also the violence that there is in Mexico, and where can that come from? And that was the exploration. A lot of the violence towards women also that I saw linked with this way of treating somebody that was different or not different, that had a different sexual preference than the church and the society had approved completely. And I wasn't able to find a real answer, I felt. And like many things in Mexico, there is no answers, there is no guilty people, you know? There's only dead bodies, since there is no, since there's impunity, and I'm not sure, maybe the press knows how many crimes are solved in Mexico. I think it's like 2% of crimes. So that creates for me a monster itself, and that was a perfect representation. You were also speaking of monsters, no? In my movie I went directly with the, I'm very, like you said, direct and want to explore things in a very real way. So I went with the real monster, literally, in the movie.
Yeah, you went all the way. It's amazing. It's really, I would say, it's out of it's such a long distance from the comfort zone that most people. A director who has been recognized internationally, they can get comfortable, right? Because they know what the festivals want. But this is so outside that it's so refreshing, and I think you remind us of why you win these prizes. It's a true honor. I would like to, quisiera pasar el micrófono a Jesús y a Ruth, porque debe ser, tú tienes una tradición, Amat, de trabajar con no actores en muchas ocasiones, pero añadiendo un elemento de ciencia ficción, no sé cómo se maneja eso en un set. ¿Nos cuentan un poco ustedes de la experiencia, chicos?
Yo sí voy a contestar en español.
Sí, por favor.
Sí, pues fue bastante interesante trabajar con estos efectos especiales, pero también fue muy interesante y como todo un proceso el trabajar con esta criatura, como con la relación, ¿no? Con la relación emocional y con todas estas cosas y esta búsqueda de la ansiedad de los personajes que tiene con la criatura, ¿no? Entonces fue como trabajar estas dos cosas muy interesantes al mismo tiempo, como lo emocional y la relación, y también pues los efectos visuales, que yo creo que para todos era algo nuevo, ¿no? También para ti, ¿no? Entonces al principio era un poco difícil, pero después como que con la práctica y en toma ya, bueno, en mi caso como que me iba relajando más y entendía, porque al final de cuentas era algo más técnico. Entonces sí fue ahí muy como interesante por las dos partes.
Claro. Jesús.
Sí, bueno, antes que nada, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Sí, yo creo que es como yo lo tomo como un laboratorio de experimento, porque era como entrar al set y empezar como a descubrir cosas en ese momento. Era como estar con la criatura, digo, yo no tengo mucho que ver con la criatura, pero cuando lo tuve era, pues, imagínate ahí la criatura, ¿no? Y vamos a jugar que es felicidad, es placer, es angustia. Entonces fue como descubrir, vaya.
Pues muchísimas gracias a Amat, a la Región Salvaje, a sus actores, a sus productores, a Jaime Romandía, que no está aquí, pero estuvo hace un par de días.
Que también Nico Celis.
Y Nico Celis también fue productor de la Región Salvaje. Un aplauso para nuestro gran Amat. Amigos, ¿alguien tiene alguna pregunta para alguno de nuestros películas aquí en Competencia Los Cabos?
Hola, una presentación a todos. Mi pregunta es para Matt. Matt, estamos viviendo en México, en el cine, un nuevo cambio en los rumbos a los que vamos. Se está haciendo más cine de género, cine que ya está rozando el horror, la ciencia ficción. ¿Tú a qué le atribuyes esto? ¿Por qué decidiste tú incursionar ahora en estos terrenos? Digo, sigue siendo tu cine, pero estamos haciendo un pequeño giro a otras cosas. ¿A qué se lo atribuyes todo esto y por qué lo hiciste?
Sí, yo también me he dado cuenta que hay diferentes aproximaciones nuevas al cine de género, a la fantasía, al terror. Y yo pienso que es por la realidad que está viviendo México, que ha de alguna forma superado ya no hay más que contar aquí, de alguna manera, o por lo menos ya no hay más respuestas que podamos encontrar, sin que nos maten tal vez, no sé. Pero entonces ir hacia ese lado no real puede dar respuestas más concretas o más directas a la verdad. Eso es lo que por eso yo quise buscar por ahí. Y las metáforas a veces son más acertadas que lo literario, lo concreto, ¿no? Práctico. Y en esta película me alejé más de la superficie, y ver más el interior de la gente con la fantasía y explorando por ahí la cosa.
¿Alguien más? ¿Una pregunta? Por ahí atrás.
Bueno, antes que nada, felicidades a todos, espléndidos sus trabajos y sus presentaciones, sus palabras. Yo les quiero hacer una especie como de invitación. Yo coordino una pequeña red de cineclubes en La Paz y pues estoy viendo cómo este tipo de fiestas son increíbles porque tenemos ocasión de ver un cine que no llega a nosotros tan fácilmente, sobre todo en ciudades como La Paz, ¿no? Y yo creo que, aunque son esfuerzos pequeños el que tenemos de esta pequeña red de cineclubes, que también ocurre que hay cineclubes aquí en Los Cabos y en el resto del estado, creo que también es como una alternativa para poder ver este tipo de películas. Y yo los animaría a ustedes a que pues hagan el esfuerzo también de que sus películas puedan llegar a nosotros, porque se complica un poco por lo legal y también por los costos, porque el trabajo que nosotros hacemos de difusión cultural, pues lo hacemos no desde una práctica profesional, es decir, no ganamos nada con esto, no lucramos, ¿no? Sin embargo, estamos muy comprometidos con que, digamos, estas tendencias contemporáneas del cine que ustedes reflejan tan excelentemente en su cine, que es hacer reflexiones sobre nuestra realidad, pues también puedan llegar al público, ¿no? A cierto público por lo menos. Y pues felicidades al Festival de los Cabos, es espléndido. Y pues ojalá que pudiéramos tener una colaboración para que esto no se quede en una fiesta que dura 5 días, sino que se pueda prolongar a lo largo del año, ¿no? A Rafi Pitts lo admiro yo mucho por la película que hizo y que él resumió, esta del iraní que se venga de la policía, ¿no? La vi yo también en otro extraordinario festival, en el FICUNAM, y pues muero por ver Soy Nero, no he tenido ocasión de verla, pero trataré de hacer mi mejor esfuerzo por verla. Y pues nada más, gracias.
Así le haremos.